BBC bosses have been summoned to Parliament to answer serious questions over their editorial standards. And that's following a damning review into a Gaza documentary narrated by the son of a senior Hamas official. The BBC has now admitted breaching its own editorial guidelines by failing to disclose who the boy was, despite paying him over £1,800 in cash, giving him a mobile phone and also a video game gift card. Nice work, isn't it? Now, his adult sister was also handed nearly £800. The Commons Culture Committee says this is yet another example of a broadcaster that's lost its grip on editorial oversight and warns that public trust in the BBC is now hanging by a thread. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sharon Haskell. Sharon Haskell, delight to have your company on tonight's show. Thank you very, very much for joining us. A lot of BBC licence payers in the United Kingdom are absolutely horrified at this. How on earth must you feel?
This is an absolute outrage. I'm not surprised. As soon as this film came out, we knew something serious was wrong there, especially after publishing that this was the son of Hamas. Now, I called for the resignation of Tim Davie after the Glastonbury outrage, and I do so again today. This is outrageous. The fact that they found the significant failing in relation to accuracy is just the least of it. There's been so many mistakes or reports, some of them were complete fabrications, so many apologies. Enough is enough. This has destroyed Israel's reputation. The BBC is not just a British channel, but this is an international channel where people all around the world are watching, expecting the accuracy. And then there's another serious question that needs to be asked. Who was paid £18,000 in cash? Because the child wouldn't hold them. It was paid to his parents. So was it paid to Hamas? And if it was paid to Hamas, a terrorist organization, a member of a terrorist organization by the BBC, should there be a criminal investigation into it?
Yeah, Sharon Haskell, you raise an excellent point. I hadn't thought of that. You're absolutely right. If cash is changing hands and this boy is clearly related to Hamas, where did the money go? Sharon Haskell, Ofcom, the broadcast regulator in the UK, is now investigating the BBC, but we've seen this before, and it seems oftentimes just to be toothless, a slap on the wrist. They've ruled out fines because guess what? The licence payer pays fines, so something more serious is likely to happen. You mentioned Tim Davie, the Director General, maybe getting the boot, but what about going a stage further? Why should the British public be paying for this?
Look, obviously, I think this is an internal issue that needs to be debated. But the fact is, the least, there's a duty to uphold fairness, accuracy, and truth. And during the last 2 years, the BBC time after time failed it. We actually numbered on the BBC Arabic channel more than 80 mistakes. These are not mistakes if those are 80 of them. Someone must do it either on purpose or have their own agenda to actually push through. Look, anti-Semitism seriously have become meaningless. Enough words. What is needed now is a decisive, meaningful action because anti-Semitism has been normalized. It's been broadcasted on the BBC. You see that on the streets. People are allowed to cross that line of racism, of violence, calls and chants of death. When you see a crowd of thousands of people, if not tens of thousands of people, chanting like useful idiot, death calls. I mean, how does anti-Semitism became so normalized in the UK?
Well, Sharon Haskell, that was going to be my next point. I think actually not only in the United Kingdom, but maybe across the entire liberal West. It seems that anti-Semitism is now the acceptable, the fashionable type of racism. Where on earth is this coming from, and what do we do about it?
Well, look, I think that there's a line that was crossed without enough enforcement, without even, deterrence. I mean, deterrence is a key point in fighting racism, in fighting violent attack. The Jewish community is afraid. My own cousin's daughter was stabbed in the back with a needle during school just because she was Jewish. She took her out of the public school. It wasn't a safe environment for her anymore. She's homeschooling her. I mean, this is the reality of many people in the Jewish community when they feel unsafe, and the lack of enforcement is terrible. There has to be a clear statement. There needs to be actions. There have been too many words, but too few actions. And I think that when the BBC, who is one of the main channels, is broadcasting anti-Semitism, those chants of death at the Glastonbury, without any consequences, when time after time they are making serious mistakes who damage Israel's reputation, which later on falls. People actually go out and blame as if the Jewish community, about many of these mistakes, the BBC actually broadcasted. Where is the end for that? Someone needs to take responsibility, and it has to happen now.
OK, Sharon Haskell, first of all, I'm desperately sorry to hear about your relative being a tunnel. That is utterly reprehensible. I hope they have peace. Thanks for joining us tonight on the show. That's the Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sharon Haskell. Thank you for your time.
Have you had a random call lately from a strange number, maybe trying to sell you something or even scam you? If so, your info could be out there. That's because of data brokers, shady companies that scrape the internet for your personal details and sell them to marketers or even scammers. These days, scammers can even use AI to mimic your friends' voices and trick you into sending money. It's not just annoying. Data brokers often target vulnerable people with high interest loans or sketchy offers. But there is a solution. Incogni, the sponsor of this video. Incogni contacts data brokers on your behalf and requests your info be deleted from their databases. And because your data can keep popping up, Incogni keeps sending removal requests to make sure it stays gone. They've just launched a new unlimited plan with custom removals. If you find your info on a weird website, just send them the link and their privacy team will work to get it taken down. Getting started is easy. Hit the link in the description, create your account and let Incogni handle the rest. It's risk-free for 30 days and you'll get 60% off an annual plan with the code GBNews. Take back control of your data with Incogni.
Now, to continue this conversation, I'm now joined by the former BBC Current Affairs producer, John Mair. John, welcome to the show. You heard their damning thoughts there from Sharon Haskell.
I did, Martin. I have one simple question for her. When is she going to allow international journalists into Gaza to report face to face and find out what the truth is there? If they don't like the truth that they see coming out of Gaza, let international journalists in. You can't report a war if you're standing on the sidelines. It's a minefield. Of course, it's a minefield, and the BBC has to rely on what comes to it. When which comes to it, sometimes is true, sometimes it's false. But there's a big point. No broadcaster should accept the Israelis not allowing them into Gaza.
John Mair, I think you're completely missing the point. This isn't about access into Gaza by Israel allowing journalists in. Today's conversation is about a flagrant violation of Ofcom rules by the BBC. Let's stick on point. The point here, the BBC has been found wanting. The regulator is going to probe it. Many people are saying this is institutional. It's repeated. It keeps happening. There have been multiple violations. It's not for you to blame Israel. Look into the mirror. The BBC is the problem, surely.
No, the BBC hasn't covered itself in glory on this. We know that. Now, there is a big point about the BBC and editorial control. It has huge numbers of people whose job it is to dictate editorial policy, and they miss this. Let's be honest. Most director generals have a flak catcher, somebody who catches the flak before it gets to them, not after it gets to them. So, but Tim is in marketing. The man who wrote this report is a management consultant. There are no journalists close to Tim, as far as I can see, who to say to him, look, Tim, this is going to be a problem. We need to do something. And, they did muck up on this. Of course they did. They should have asked the right questions early on, not after the event.
But John Mair, they also mucked up on their Glastonbury coverage. Death to the IDF. And to date, nobody's been held accountable for that. So I put it to you, where does the buck stop? Surely the head honcho should carry the can for mistakes. Or is this a culture of blame where it goes downstream? Or nobody ever actually gets held to account?
Well, there's a saying in the BBC, the deputy heads will roll. The head of music has taken unwanted leave, hasn't she? So she did you not know that she's been blamed for the Glastonbury fiasco? No, I mean that again was they knew what was coming. Somebody should have caught that flak before it made the screen. They didn't, and there the BBC has a problem. But there are too many incidents like this occurring. But Sky broadcast a perfectly good documentary on doctors in Gaza. Channel 4 broadcast a good documentary about medical people in Gaza. The BBC had turned that down. They were wrong. It's a minefield, but it's a minefield which an organisation like the BBC should be able to tread quite carefully.
John Mair, it may be a minefield, but the BBC keeps repeatedly stepping on mines. And I put it to you, perhaps that's not a coincidence. Perhaps there's a mindset in the editorial shop floor of the BBC that's more, how should we say, aligned to the pro-Palestine message and more aligned to make mistakes like this. The evidence is abundant.
I do think that's total rubbish, and for the foreign minister to equate being examining Israeli actions with anti-Semitism, that's total rubbish as well. So no, the BBC needs to have a director general needs a flat catcher. If you can't find one, you'll have to go. And he's skating on very thin ice at the moment. There are too many incidents coming down the line with Tim.
So I put it to you, rather than having a flak catcher, what that means is throw somebody junior under the bus for repeated institutional failings. Surely the buck stops with the head honcho. Take account, take responsibility.
The Director General is editor-in-chief. He's not a journalist. The man who wrote this report is not a journalist. He needs people around him who can spot these things and say, look, we shouldn't be doing this, or we should be doing it in a different way.
But John, isn't that the problem with the BBC? It's just this morass of bureaucracy. Nobody knows who does what. We do know we pay for it all as licence payers, and people are sick of this lack of accountability. Ofcom are putting them under the cosh. Somebody needs to be held accountable. No more reports. We won't repeat mistakes.
Martin, you jump into conclusions. Ofcom are having an investigation. They haven't put them under the cosh. They haven't found them guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. Ofcom have not said, oh, look, we're going to find the BBC guilty. They're going to have an investigation. No, I mean, the BBC needs to examine its procedures and actually catch the flak before it hits the screen, and catch the flak before it hits the Director General, and before it hits GB News.
So what you're saying then is this is a downstream problem. Some junior person will cop the flak and it'll be business as normal.
No, I'm saying that the BBC should be allowed to report Gaza properly and fairly. But
it isn't.
Until that,
it isn't reporting Gaza properly. That's the point.
Is GB News doing that? Is Sky News doing that? No, they're not, because they're not allowed.
It's the BBC, John Mair, that's facing an Ofcom investigation over its Gaza reporting. Stop deflecting.
Okay, I mean, look, they need to be allowed in to report. Reporters report. Journalists go to places. It's something to bash
blaming Israel. You're actually blaming Israel. You're blaming Israel for an Ofcom violation of inappropriate coverage of content in Gaza. John Mair, I'll put it to you. That's the precise issue of the problem here.
It is, but who's bombing Gaza? Not the BBC.
Well, the licence
the BBC's not bombing Gaza either, as far as I can tell.
Okay, John Mair, we'll leave it there. The former BBC current affairs producer.
This one will run and run.
It certainly will. And let's hope we get some kind of outcome this time rather than more buck passing. Thank you very much, John Mair.